My name is Liz Partsch.
And I am Paul Rowley.
And welcome to Farmer Dairy's virtual newsletter,
where we will be giving you a rundown of all of the news this week.
Yes.
Yeah, and there was some news.
Yeah, like
there
every
always
week,
is.
there's some good and there's a little bit of bad news sprinkled in there.
There really is,
so, well, I'll kick it off.
Okay.
This week, contributing writer Jake Zakowski wrote about the Pennsylvania No-Till Alliance.
Oh, fun.
And the members who created it.
Okay.
Yeah. So Jim Hershey started farming in Lancaster County in 1977. But the 80s, he saw, a big problem trying to hire help. It just became unaffordable.
Yeah.
So he decided to switch to no-tilling farming. And, besides it being more economically viable for him, not having to pay for labor and other stuff, it was also more environmentally friendly.
Oh.
Yeah, so Hershey would go on to be one of the founding members of the Pennsylvania No-Till Alliance, which was created in 2005.
Oh, neat.
And since then, the group's members have just doubled in the last decade.
Oh.
And today, more than 1.6 million acres of Pennsylvania cropland are no-till.
Wow.
Which is about 37% of the state's 4 million acres of cropland.
That's really big. Wow.
So, the Pennsylvania No-Till Alliance will be hosting 2 upcoming events in July for those interested in learning more about the benefits of no-till farming from experienced farmers.
Oh.
To find out more about that and the Pennsylvania No-Till Alliance, you guys can check out farmerdairy.com or, find a local newsstand and find the paper. So
super neat. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
pretty interesting story.
We'll have to do that. Okay. Well, on a really sad note, I have a story. After 12 years of fighting hunger with dignity and determination, the nonprofit StarkFresh, which is the Canton-based food justice organization that served over 64,000 Stark County residents, shut its doors. So that's very disappointing and sad. At its core, StarkFresh believed that access to healthy food was not just a privilege, it was a right. And that was really their guiding mission and light throughout their work over the past decade and some change. Executive Director Tom Phillips, the organization that he was in charge of, launched nonprofit grocery stores in Alliance and also Canton. And they distributed over 2 million pounds of food and then gave out more than 647,000 packets through its free seed library for people to grow their own produce at home. That impact could not outlast the harsh realities that many nonprofits face, including this one, which is rising costs, unstable funding sources, and then also just political shifts that kind of made all of their support, not really reliable. Phillips described it to Farm and Dairy almost like a tightrope act when he was talking to me. He said that tightrope really just kind of finally snapped this year. And on July 1st, the board of directors announced that they'd made the decision to shut down StarkFresh, citing financial and operational challenges. So really disappointing. The Canton location is now permanently closed. In Alliance, the grocery store that's over there that they're operating will remain open until August 15th, and that will help folks who have vouchers outstanding to redeem what food is left so they can still use those. Full operations will end for Canton Fresh by September 1st. And just as StarkFresh steps away, a new federal bill is also threatening to deepen the very crisis that this organization set out to solve. So H.R. 1, or otherwise known as the Big Beautiful Bill Act, which was signed into law on July 4th by President Donald J. Trump, slashes funding for food and health programs, including SNAP and also Medicaid. Some advocates are warning that it could leave Ohio scrambling to cover over about $600 million just to maintain current benefit levels, a burden that they say the state and small nonprofits cannot carry alone. Jory Novotny of the Ohio Association of Food Banks put it this way, very bluntly, in a press release. She said, quote, "We are not equipped to fill the gaps that these fundamental structural changes and cuts would create for children, seniors, veterans, disabled Ohioans, and working families." So what happens now? So Mr. Phillips, for his part, told me that the mission will live on in some ways, such as in conversations with local groups that are hoping to carry on the seed library that they had started. And then also he told me that their records, they have to keep them forever. So there'll be maybe some toolkits that can be born out of those, oral histories. And it's also, Canton is now a community that knows that this kind of work and this transformation is possible. StarkFresh proved it over its lifetime. He told me that essentially for 12 years, they really did it. They accomplished what they set out to do. And then he hopes that leaders will realize just how much they relied on them, how valuable and how vulnerable they are at the same time.
Yeah. Wow. Sounds like an important read.
Yeah.
I'll have to give it a read.
Yeah.
Well, I'll try to lift up our spirits or
Please.
reignite the fire.
Yes,
I should say.
please.
So I read about the Western Reserve Artists Blacksmith Association's annual conference.
Oh, I like what you did there.
Yeah, that took place in June, from June 27th to 29th in Burton, Ohio. And the conference every year features an out-of-house or in-house, aka club member, blacksmith to demonstrate their specialized craft.
Ah.
So this year, Anna Koplik was the featured demonstrator, who is a blacksmith specializing in spatulas, hammers, spoons, and scoops. And she was doing live demonstrations of those.
Cool.
At the event, I actually got to witness Anna making a spatula.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it was really fascinating.
Yeah.
And I think I actually may insert a video of it.
Yay.
And for those of you listening to the podcast, that video will be online.
Nice.
Going into that section where I don't need as much width and getting a little bit more length out there. That's it. So I've kind of set up my.
But yeah, it was really incredible. She looked like a bad A word. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, she was
Yeah.
awesome. But before we get into Anna, I do want to talk about just blacksmithing in general, because to me, it really feels like an old time trade, or shall I say, lost art.
Right.
I mean, for me, writing this personally before going to this event, every time I'd see the word blacksmith, I'd think of the medieval times,
Right.
like Game of Thrones or The Witcher. Like, I'd only associate it with a show
Right.
that I was watching, right? But really, blacksmithing is why society looks the way it is today, said President of the Western Reserve Artists Blacksmith Association, Roy Troutman.
Wow.
It really dates back very far in history to 1600 BC.
Oh my goodness.
And then, during the Middle Ages and colonial times in America, blacksmiths were really leaders in villages. They really had a pivotal role, creating everything.
Yeah.
So Troutman even said to me, and this is a quote, that when man learned how to make steel, everything evolved from that. Buildings, factories, warfare, it all started with blacksmithing.
Wow.
Because blacksmiths were the people who created steel.
Yeah.
So the Western Reserve Artists Blacksmith Association itself was created in the late 80s when several blacksmiths really just got together to learn from each other and, learning from each other's skills and so they could get better. Today it hosts demonstrations at local events and really puts an emphasis on education and really bringing in newcomers. They want more people to be interested in, what they're doing in blacksmithing. And they host lots of events. That's why Anna Koplik was actually at the conference.
Okay.
She's been blacksmithing for about 10 years. A lot of that is focused on demonstrations, teaching others.
Yeah.
And particularly for her, as a female blacksmith, she hopes to really serve as a reminder for other women that there's space for them in this field.
Yeah.
Blacksmithing is predominantly male dominated.
Right.
But she hopes that her being in this space and being kind of a leader will encourage others to get involved. So for anyone interested in blacksmithing, male, female, or, whatever you identify as, the association hosts an open forge night for newcomers every Tuesday.
That's so cool.
So, to read more about the event or, the Western Reserve Artists Blacksmith Association, visit farmandairy.com, because let me tell you, I'm considering being a blacksmith now.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah. So
Thank you, blacksmiths. That's really cool for all the
How
things.
awesome.
Yeah. Well, I'll do a little history jump too. So way back in 1947, the Tennessee Farm Bureau saw that there was an issue with gap with health insurance and health coverage. A lot of their members were not able to get or access health insurance of any kind, so they created their own solution back then. And that idea grew into what is now known as the Farm Bureau Health Plans, which is the largest private health coverage provider in Tennessee, which is kind of neat.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Fast forward to today, and Ohio is now following suit after a long period of trying to bring something like that to fruition here. So thanks to Senate Bill 100, which was signed into law by Governor Mike DeWine on July 1st, Ohio's farm families are finally on track to get a health plan that is suitable for them, and they're really excited about it. Traditional health insurance has long been a challenge for farmers for a couple of different reasons. You got rising costs. Farmers often have unpredictable incomes year after year. And many farmers have just kind of found themselves priced out or penalized for like either earning too much or too little in a given year. A lot of variables. And so it's kind of hard to like make that a standard static insurance policy kind of follow you all that time. So things are about to change now. Ohio Farm Bureau health plans will provide quality options at pretty competitive rates. And enrollment is expected to start pretty much this fall, about 90 days after DeWine's signature on the bill. So what happens, or what's different, I guess, this time? The plans are pretty evergreen, so that means that once you're in, you stay in. There's no annual reapplication process. You don't have to like recertify every year, unless you want to make a change of some kind, which is really huge for farmers dealing with unpredictable everything, because everything in their industry is obviously pretty unpredictable. You can get an individual plan, or you can get a plan that covers your entire family, and the cost will not go up with each dependent that you add, which is kind of neat.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So there's flat rate family plans, just like in other states that have adopted this similar model. I think there's about, I want to say there's 12 other states that have this kind of model going on. But this is important because these health plans are not considered traditional insurance under Ohio law. They're not recognized as health insurance. They're also not subject to like the same consumer protections that typical insurance plans are, like under the Affordable Care Act, for example. So that means that in some cases, folks with pre-existing conditions or they actually might be denied some coverage, or they might face like higher rates, that kind of thing. But for many, this is really the most practical solution yet for the health insurance coverage issue that a lot of farmers face. And they've been asking for it. A lot of Farm Bureau members in Ohio are like, please do something. So this is something. And it's really meeting, farmers' needs where they are, and they've asked for it. So it's really cool. And Collective Voice really turned into legislation for this one in about 6 months. They really turned it around. So
Wow,
it's a neat
that's
story.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really awesome that they were able to get it done. That doesn't happen a lot.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, awesome. Well, the U.S. Department of Agriculture's National Agricultural Statistics Survey released a new report that found 95.2 million acres of corn was planted in the U.S. in 2025.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, and that's up from 5% last year, so even more than last year.
Yeah.
Soybeans, on the other hand, occupied 83.4 million acres, down 4% from the previous year.
Oh, she's flopping.
Yeah. So to quantify these numbers, the agency surveyed roughly 67,700 farm operations during the first 2 weeks of June.
Okay.
And then, they found lots of more information identified in the report, which includes that 94% of all corn acres planted in the U.S. are biotech varieties,
Oh,
which is the same as 2024, so not much has changed there.
okay.
And for soybean producers, they planted 96% soybean acreage consisted of 96% using herbicide-resistant seed varieties.
Oh,
So
interesting.
again, same as the year prior, nothing has really changed much in the seed being planted. But the report also found that wheat planting took up an area of 45.5 million acres, which is down 1% from 2024.
Okay.
Yeah, so for those interested in reading the full report, they can go to the USDA's website, or obviously they can check out the paper, because we have that in there as well.
That's right. Very
Yeah.
neat. Okay. And I have, I'm going to give a little recap of a really cool column in our paper this week. So Jim Abrams, you all know him, a longtime wildlife officer, outdoor enthusiast, and, a lifelong student of the night.
I love that. I love that.
Brings us a really interesting column this week. And since I just really need to be sitting on my porch at around dusk right now with a glass of white wine listening to Sarah McLachlan, I thought that Jim most closely brought me, that vibe back to that mind place where I really want to be. So anyway, as Jim can tell you, there's something special, I guess, about entering the woods as twilight fades. For most people, that inspires a sort of primal fear. Side note, love this sort of setting for like a horror video game, of which I play many. But that's the closest that I usually get to like entering the woods at night. And most people probably don't go tramping around the forest at that time of day either. We don't have the vision for it. Like as human beings, like we don't really built to see things clearly at night. We can't really assess our surroundings or maybe the threats that are lurking nearby. And our ancestors also recognized that the dark is kind of a time of danger when predators prowled and human senses fall short,
Yeah.
It was the hour for those, our forebears, the hour of things unseen, goblins, werewolves, and highwaymen.
Maybe vampires too. right?
Maybe vampires too, yeah. Stories passed down in the flickering firelight. Jim's column reminds us that the woods at night are just even wilder than we can imagine. And step forward as he guides you into this nether realm, and you'll feel it too. You'll understand. So Jim writes, this is a quote. He says, "For me, the night's darkening cloak brings back the magical, not the superstitious fears of our ancestors, but the thrill of a new world coming to life."
Wow. That
Very
was so
cool.
poetic.
I know. Without a flashlight, the eyes eventually somewhat adjust. A deer mouse rustles through the brush. A bullfrog croons on and on. The woods, once so still, reveal themselves if you let them. Speaking for himself, Jim says, or he just takes in every note that he's, this symphony of sound in the woods, if you will. One of the loudest voices in this nocturnal chorus is the barred owl, which is kind of gets its namesake for like the streaking pattern that's sort of like across its chest. They're brown gray and they've got those streaks, and they prefer very quiet, wet forests with old trees. They're also not the most like architecturally inclined owl. They don't like to build their own nests. They move into like haunted, abandoned, like former nests of like hawks or eagles or like squirrels or that kind of thing.
To work smarter, not harder.
Exactly. So they hunt everything. They're very hungry, voracious eaters, much like I am. Mice to frogs to crayfish, like they'll eat it all. And for Jim, and also maybe our readers as well, their call is both a welcome and a warning. You're not alone out here. In one of his latest projects, Jim describes that he and his friend actually repurposed an old deer stand into a nesting box for barred owls because they just love them so much. It's a small gesture to kind of invite, the wilderness closer and maybe get you a front row seat to that nightly performance.
Yeah, what a great idea.
I know. Really neat. And there's information in his column for how you can do the same at home if you would also like to sort of bring the wild, closer to you. So I highly recommend that you check that out if you would like to do that as well.
Yeah, sounds like a cool column.
Yeah. So, and I believe that is our top stories for the week.
To read the full stories, go to farmandairy.com or find your local newsstand.
That's where you'll find them. And thanks for tuning in. See you in the wild or next week.
Next week.